Captain Marcus had served the royal family for 15 years. His black uniform was always perfect, his sword always sharp, and his loyalty never questioned. The other guards looked up to him because he never made mistakes and always followed orders without asking questions. On this cold morning, the king called Marcus to his private room. The king looked worried, something Marcus had never seen before. The royal chamber was filled with golden decorations and expensive paintings. But today everything felt heavy and serious. "Marcus, I have a special mission for you," the king said, his voice quiet and careful. "You must take this sealed letter to Lord Harrison in the northern village. But you cannot open it, and you cannot tell anyone about this mission." Marcus took the thick envelope. It felt heavier than normal paper, and there was a strange red seal on it that he had never seen before. The king's hands were shaking slightly. As he gave it to Marcus, "Your Majesty, is everything all right?" Marcus asked. He had never questioned the king before, but something felt different today. The king turned away and looked out the window. "Just deliver the letter, Marcus. Trust me. This is very important for our kingdom. Take your horse and go alone. Do not stop anywhere, and do not talk to anyone on the way." Marcus put the letter inside his jacket, close to his heart. He had delivered many messages before, but none had felt this mysterious. As he walked through the castle halls, other guards smiled and nodded at him like always. But Marcus felt like he was carrying a heavy secret. When he reached the stable, his horse Thunder was waiting. Thunder was a strong black horse that had been with Marcus for many years. As Marcus prepared for the journey, he noticed that the stable boy seemed nervous too. "Captain, be careful on your journey," the young boy whispered. "Strange things have been happening lately. People are talking about changes coming to the kingdom." Marcus didn't answer, but his heart started beating faster. What changes? What was really in this letter? He had always trusted the king completely, but now small doubts were growing in his mind like weeds in a garden. The morning sun was bright as Marcus rode out of the castle gates. The northern village was 2 days away through forests and small towns. Usually Marcus enjoyed these rides because the countryside was beautiful and peaceful. But today, every shadow seemed darker, and every sound made him more alert. As Thunder's hooves hit the stone road, Marcus tried to push away his worried thoughts. He was a royal guard. His job was to follow orders, not to ask questions. Letter in his jacket felt like it was burning through the fabric, reminding him constantly that something unusual was happening. The first day of travel went smoothly. Marcus stopped only to rest Thunder and eat some bread and cheese. He avoided the main roads and took smaller paths through the forest, just like the king had suggested. But as evening came, he started to feel like someone was following him. When he looked back, he saw nothing but trees and empty road. But the feeling wouldn't go away. Marcus had learned to trust his instincts during his years as a guard. And right now, his instincts were telling him that this mission was more dangerous than the king had said. As the sun set behind the mountains, Marcus found a small clearing to rest for the night. He made a small fire and tied Thunder to a nearby tree. The letter was still in his jacket, and he could feel it every time he moved. His curiosity was growing stronger, but he had promised the king not to open it. Thunder suddenly lifted his head and looked toward the forest, his ears standing up straight. Marcus quickly put out the fire and grabbed his sword. Something was out there in the darkness, and whatever it was getting closer. 3 men in dark clothes stepped out from behind the trees. Their faces were covered with cloth masks, and they carried sharp swords that gleamed in the moonlight. Marcus stood up slowly, keeping his hand on his sword handle. "Give us the letter, Captain," one of them said in a rough voice. "We know you're carrying something important for the king." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. How did they know about the letter? Only he and the king knew about this secret mission. Someone had betrayed them, but who? "I don't know what you're talking about," Marcus said, trying to sound calm. But inside, his heart was racing like Thunder's hooves on a fast ride. The man laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Don't play games with us, Captain. We've been watching you since you left the castle. Hand over the letter and we might let you live." Marcus drew his sword in one quick movement. The metal sang as it came out of its holder. "I am a royal guard. I protect the king's property with my life." The three men attacked at the same time. Marcus had trained for moments like this, but fighting three enemies at once was harder than any practice session. His sword moved like lightning, blocking their attacks and striking back. One attacker swung his sword toward Marcus's head, but Marcus ducked and spun around, cutting the man's arm. The man screamed and dropped his weapon. The other two came at Marcus from different sides, trying to trap him between them. Marcus jumped backward, closer to Thunder. His horse was stamping his feet and making loud noises, scared by the fighting. The captain used Thunder as protection, keeping the horse between him and one attacker while fighting the other. The battle lasted only a few minutes, but it felt like hours. When it was over, two of the men were on the ground, hurt but still breathing. The third man had run away into the dark forest. Marcus was breathing hard, and there was a cut on his arm where one sword had gotten through his defense. But he was alive, and the letter was still safe in his jacket. He looked down at the two injured men. "Who sent you?" he demanded. "Who told you about the letter?" One man looked up at him with angry eyes. "You don't understand, Captain. That letter you're carrying will destroy everything you believe in. The king is not who you think he is." "You're lying," Marcus said, but his voice didn't sound as sure as before. "Open the letter," the man said, coughing up blood. "Read it yourself. Then you'll know the truth about your precious king." Marcus stared at the man. Every part of his training told him to ignore these words. These were criminals, enemies of the kingdom. But the doubt that had started in the castle was growing bigger. Now he tied up the two injured men with rope from his supplies, then gathered his things quickly. Couldn't stay here any longer. Three men knew about his mission. There might be more coming. As he rode away on Thunder, the injured man's words kept repeating in his mind. "That letter will destroy everything you believe in." What could be in the letter that was so terrible? For the first time in his 15 years of service, Marcus thought about disobeying a direct order from the king. His curiosity was like a fire that kept getting bigger and bigger. But he had sworn an oath to be loyal, and royal guards never broke their promises. The rest of the night was long and difficult. Marcus didn't stop to rest again. Kept Thunder moving through the dark forest paths, always listening for sounds of more attackers. Every owl's call and every branch breaking made him grip his sword tighter. As the sun started to rise, Marcus could see smoke coming from chimneys in a small village ahead. He was tired. Thunder was tired, and they both needed food and water. But could he trust anyone? The attackers had known exactly where to find him. In the village, Marcus stopped at a small inn. The old woman who owned it smiled warmly and offered him breakfast. But Marcus noticed that she kept looking at his royal guard uniform with strange eyes. "Not many royal guards come through here," she said, as she served him bread and soup. "What brings you to our quiet village?" Marcus didn't answer directly. "Just traveling through, madam. Nothing special." But as he ate, he heard two men at another table talking quietly. One of them said something about the captain with the letter, and Lord Harrison won't be happy. Marcus pretended not to hear. But inside he felt like ice water was running through his body. Everyone seemed to know about his secret mission. How was that possible? And what was really waiting for him in the northern village? Marcus left the inn quickly and continued his journey toward the northern village. But now he was more careful, staying away from main roads and avoiding other travelers. The letter in his jacket felt heavier with each mile Thunder carried him. Forward by afternoon, they reached a hill where Marcus could see the northern village in the distance. It looked peaceful, with small houses and gardens surrounded by green fields. Smoke was coming from chimneys, and he could see people walking in the streets like it was any normal day. But something was wrong. Marcus had been to this village before, and it usually had guards at the entrance. Today, he couldn't see any guards anywhere. Also, there were too many horses tied up near the big building where Lord Harrison lived. Important people were visiting, but why? Marcus decided to wait until evening before entering the village. Found a place to hide behind some rocks where he could watch everything. Thunder was getting restless, but Marcus gave him some grass. "Do eat," and whispered calming words. As the sun went down, Marcus saw something that made his heart stop. A group of men in the same dark clothes as the attackers from last night were walking around the village. They weren't hiding or sneaking around. They were acting like they owned the place. One of them was talking to Lord Harrison himself.
Marcus.
Could see them clearly through a small telescope. Lord Harrison was nodding and pointing toward the road that Marcus had traveled on. They were waiting for him. This was a trap. But how could Lord Harrison be part of it? He was supposed to be. Loyal to the king. Marcus had delivered messages to him many times before, and Lord Harrison had always been kind and respectful. Marcus felt like the ground was moving under his feet. If Lord Harrison was working with the attackers, then who could he trust? What was in this letter that made so many people want it? As darkness fell, Marcus made a difficult decision. He had to know what was in the letter. If everyone was willing to fight and die for it, if Lord Harrison himself was involved, then Marcus needed to understand what he was really carrying. His hand shook as he took the letter out of his jacket. The red seal looked like a dragon, but it wasn't the king's usual seal. Marcus had seen the king's seal thousands of times, and this was different. He broke the seal carefully and opened the letter. Inside was a single page written in the king's handwriting. But as Marcus read the words, his whole world started to fall apart. "Lord Harrison," the letter began. "Captain Marcus has discovered our plan to sell the kingdom's grain reserves to our enemies, while our people starve this winter. He must not be allowed to return to the castle alive. Kill him and make it look like bandits attacked him on the road. Burn this letter after reading it. Long live our profitable partnership." Marcus read the letter 3 times, hoping he had made a mistake. But the words stayed the same. The king, the man he had served faithfully for 15 years, had sent him on this mission to die. Lord Harrison was supposed to murder him. The captain sat down heavily on a rock, feeling like someone had hit him in the stomach with a hammer. Everything he believed in was lies. The king wasn't protecting the kingdom. He was stealing food from his own people and selling it to enemy countries. And Marcus had accidentally found out about it. But how had he found out? Marcus tried to remember the last few weeks. Then it came to him. 2 weeks ago, he had been doing his evening patrol when he saw several large wagons leaving the castle. At midnight, when he asked about it the next day, the king had said they were sending supplies to help a village that had been attacked by bandits. But Marcus had been curious and had ridden to that village the next week. The village was fine. No attack had happened there. People had never received any supplies from the king. Now, Marcus understood why the king had looked so worried when he gave him the letter. The king knew that Marcus was starting to ask questions, so he had created this fake mission to get rid of his most loyal guard. Thunder made a soft noise, bringing Marcus back to the present moment. Tears were running down his face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of anger. The king had betrayed him. But more importantly, the king was betraying all the innocent people in the kingdom. While families would go hungry, this winter, the king would get rich by selling their food to enemies. Marcus looked down at the village where Lord Harrison was waiting to kill him. He could run away, escape to another country, and save his own life. But what about all the people? Who would suffer because of the king's greed? For 15 years, Marcus had followed orders without question. Tonight, for the first time in his life, he was going to disobey the king. But this time, he wasn't going to be loyal to the man who wore the crown. He was going to be loyal to the people who deserved better. Marcus spent the night making a plan. He couldn't just run away and leave innocent people to suffer. But he also couldn't fight Lord Harrison and all his men by himself. He needed help, but who would believe a story this terrible about their king? As morning came, Marcus remembered something important. His younger brother David lived in a town not far from here. David was a merchant who traveled to many different places and knew lots of people. More importantly, David had always been honest and brave, even when they were children. Marcus rode Thunder to his brother's town, staying hidden in the forests and avoiding main roads. When he arrived at David's house, his brother was surprised to see him. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" David said, hugging his older brother. "You look terrible. When did you last sleep?" Marcus looked around to make sure no one could hear. Then told David everything. He showed him the letter and explained about the king's plan to sell the kingdom's grain to enemies. David's face became very serious as he listened. When Marcus finished talking, David was quiet for a long time. "I believe you," David finally said. "Last month, I tried to buy grain for my customers, but the royal storehouses said they didn't have any to sell. But I heard from other merchants that large amounts of grain were being moved at night toward the border. What can we do? Marcus asked. If we tell people, who will believe us? The king is popular, and I'm just one guard with a letter that could be fake. David smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Maybe you're just one guard, Marcus, but I know someone who isn't. You remember our cousin Sarah? Marcus nodded. Sarah had always been the smartest person in their family. She had become a scribe and worked for the High Council, the group of wise people who help make laws for the kingdom. Sarah has been worried about strange things happening in the government, David continued. She told me that several council members have been asking questions about missing grain, reports, and mysterious late-night meetings. If we show her this letter, she might be able to help us. The two brothers rode together to the capital city where Sarah worked. It took them most of the day, and Marcus was nervous the whole time. By now, Lord Harrison would know that Marcus hadn't come to the village. He would have sent word back to the king that the plan had failed. Sarah lived in a small apartment near the government buildings. When she saw Marcus and David at her door, she could tell immediately that something serious was happening. "Come in quickly," she said, looking around to see if anyone was watching them. Inside her apartment, Sarah listened to Marcus's story while reading the letter carefully. She studied the handwriting and the paper, checking every detail. "This is real," she said finally. "I recognize the king's handwriting, and this paper is the expensive type that only the royal office uses. But Marcus, do you understand how dangerous this is? If the king finds out that you have this letter, he won't just try to have you killed. He'll try to kill all of us." "I know," Marcus said, "but we can't let him steal food from hungry families. While he gets rich, that's not what a good king does." Sarah stood up and walked to her window, thinking hard. 3 council members have been investigating strange grain shortages, she said. Lord William, Lady Catherine, and Master Thomas. They're honest people who really care about the kingdom. But they need proof before they can accuse the king of anything. "This letter is proof," David said. "Yes, but we need more than one letter," Sarah replied. "We need to find out where the grain is being stored before it's sold, and we need to catch them actually selling it to the enemies. Otherwise, the king can just say the letter is fake and that Marcus is a traitor." Marcus felt hope growing in his chest for the first time since this all started. "What do you think we should do?" Sarah sat back down and looked at both her cousins seriously. "We're going to set a trap, but it's going to be very dangerous, and we might not survive it." She explained her plan. Marcus would go back to Lord Harrison and pretend that he hadn't. Read the letter. He would act like he was still loyal to the king and let Lord Harrison take him prisoner. While he was captured, David and Sarah would follow the next grain shipment to see where it was really going. "That's too dangerous for Marcus," David said. "If Lord Harrison realizes that Marcus knows the truth, he'll kill him immediately." "I can handle it," Marcus said. "I've been pretending to be loyal to the king for 15 years. I can pretend for a few more days." Sarah pulled out some paper and started writing. "I'm going to send secret messages to Lord William, Lady Catherine, and Master Thomas. I'll tell them to be ready to act quickly when we have all the proof we need." As night fell, the 3 cousins prepared for the most dangerous thing any of them had ever attempted. They were going to try to expose the king's betrayal and save their people from starvation. Marcus looked at the letter one more time before putting it back in his jacket. Tomorrow, he would ride back to Lord Harrison and let himself be captured. He was scared, but he wasn't alone anymore. For the first time since this nightmare began, he had hope. "If something happens to me," Marcus told his brother and cousin, "make sure the people know the truth about their king." The next morning, Marcus rode thunder back toward the northern village. His heart was beating fast, but he tried to look calm and tired, like a guard who had been traveling for days without knowing about any danger. As he approached the village, several men in dark clothes came out to meet him. Marcus recognized one of them as the man who had escaped during the fight 2 nights ago. "Captain Marcus," the man said with a fake smile, "Lord Harrison has been waiting for you. He was worried. When you didn't arrive yesterday, my horse needed rest," Marcus replied, trying to sound normal. and I had to take a longer route because there were bandits on the main road. They attacked me, but I fought them off." The man's eyes became suspicious. "Bandits, what did they want?" "They tried to rob me," Marcus said, "but I didn't let them get anything important." The men led Marcus into the village, and he could see that his plan was working. They believed he didn't know the truth. But as they walked through the streets, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. There were large wagons everywhere, filled with grain sacks. Men were loading them carefully, and Marcus could see that the sacks had markings from the royal storehouses. This wasn't just about one letter. The king and Lord Harrison were stealing massive amounts of food. Lord Harrison came out of his house to greet Marcus. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, but now Marcus could see the lies behind his smile. "Captain Marcus." "Thank goodness you're safe," Lord Harrison said, shaking Marcus's hand. "I heard there were dangerous men on the roads. Come inside. You must be hungry and tired." Inside Lord Harrison's house, Marcus was given food and wine. He ate carefully, worried that the food might be poisoned. But Lord Harrison seemed relaxed and friendly. "I trust your journey went well?" Lord Harrison asked. "And you have something for me from His Majesty?" Marcus took the letter out of his jacket. His hands didn't shake, and his voice stayed steady. "Yes, my lord. The king said this was very important, and that I should give it only to you." Lord Harrison took the letter and opened it, reading it quickly. As he read, his expression changed. From friendly to businesslike, "Captain, you've served the kingdom well," Lord Harrison said. "But I'm afraid your service is about to end." Before Marcus could react, 4 men grabbed him from behind. They tied his hands with rope and took away his sword. Marcus pretended to be shocked and confused. "My lord, what's happening?" "Have I done something wrong?" said, acting like he didn't understand. "You ask too many questions, Captain, Lord," Harrison replied. "The king has decided that guards who are too curious are dangerous to the kingdom." They locked Marcus in a small room in the basement of Lord Harrison's house. There was only one tiny window near the ceiling, and the door was thick wood with heavy locks. But Marcus wasn't worried about escaping yet. He needed to stay captured. Long enough for David and Sarah to follow the grain wagons and find out where they were going. For 2 days, Marcus stayed in the dark room. Guards brought him bread and water twice a day, but they didn't talk to him. Through the small window, he could hear wagons moving through the village at night. On the 3rd day, Lord Harrison came to see him. "Captain, tomorrow we're going to take you into the forest," Lord Harrison said. "We'll make it look like bandits killed you. Your horse will run back to the castle without you, and everyone will think you died protecting the king's message." Marcus asked, still pretending not to understand. "I've always been loyal to the king, 'cause the king is building a new future for this kingdom," Lord Harrison replied. "A future where smart men like us get rich, and stupid people like the common farmers learn their place. You wouldn't understand." That night, Marcus heard familiar sounds outside his window. It was thunder's hooves, but moving very quietly. Then he heard his brother David's voice whispering. "Marcus, are you in there, David?" Marcus whispered back, "What did you find?" "The grain wagons are going to the enemy army's camp, just past the eastern border," David whispered quickly. "Sarah has told the council members, and they're riding here with loyal soldiers. But we need to keep you alive until they arrive." "How long?" Marcus asked. "They should be here by tomorrow afternoon. Lord Harrison plans to kill you in the morning," Marcus thought quickly. "Can you create a distraction? Something to delay them?" "I have an idea," David said, "but you need to be ready to fight when the time comes."
"I'll leave the next morning."
Marcus heard shouting outside. Through his tiny window, he could see orange light flickering. Something was on fire. Fire. Fire in the grain storage. Someone yelled. Marcus smiled. His clever brother had set fire to one of the grain storage buildings. It wasn't enough to hurt anyone, but it would keep Lord Harrison's men busy for hours. The door to Marcus's prison opened, and 2 guards came in. "Lord Harrison wants to wait." Can't have witnesses seeing us in the forest? Too bad, the other guard laughed. I was looking forward to getting this over with, but Marcus was looking forward to something else. Through the window, he could hear the sound of many horses approaching fast. Sarah and the council members were coming, and they were bringing an army with them. The sound of horses grew louder and louder until Marcus could hear them riding into the village. Then came the sound of metal hitting metal, swords fighting swords. What's happening up there? One of Marcus's guards asked the other. Before the second guard could answer, the door to the basement burst open. Sarah came running down the stairs, carrying a key in her hand. "Marcus, are you hurt?" she asked as she unlocked his chains. "I'm fine," Marcus said, rubbing his wrists where the ropes had been. "What's happening outside?" "Lord William brought 50 loyal soldiers," Sarah explained quickly. "They caught Lord Harrison and his men trying to escape with the grain wagons. But we have a bigger problem." She handed Marcus his sword, which she had taken from Lord Harrison's. "Men, the king knows we're here. He's riding from the castle with his own army. We have maybe 2 hours before he arrives." Marcus, Sarah, and the 2 captured guards ran upstairs and outside. The village was full of soldiers wearing the blue uniforms of the High Council. Lord Harrison was sitting on the ground with his hands tied, looking angry and defeated. Lord William, a tall man with white hair and honest eyes, came over to Marcus. "Captain, we owe you a great debt," Lord William said. "Your courage has saved many lives. But now we must prepare for the most difficult part." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked. Lady Catherine, a strong woman with gray hair, joined their conversation. "We have the proof we need about the king's crimes," she said. "The grain wagons, the letter, and Lord Harrison's confession. But the king is still the king. Many people will find it hard to believe that he would betray them." Master Thomas, the youngest of the 3 council members, looked worried. "And the king's army is 3 times bigger than ours. If we fight many, good people will die." Marcus thought about everything that had happened. A week ago, his life had been simple. He was a loyal guard who followed orders and never asked questions. Now he was part of a group trying to remove a king from power. "If we don't fight," Marcus asked, "what if we let the people decide?" The council members looked at him with curious expressions. "Explain what you mean," Lord William said. Marcus pointed toward the grain wagons that were still loaded and ready to leave. "Let's bring those wagons to the capital city. Show all the people what their king was planning to do with their food. Let them see the contracts with the enemy army. Let them hear Lord Harrison confess." "But the king will try to stop us," Lady Catherine said. "Maybe," Marcus replied. "But if we travel through all the villages on the way back to the capital, and if we tell everyone what we found, the king won't be able to hurt us. There will be too many witnesses." Sarah smiled proudly at her cousin. "That's brilliant, Marcus. The king's power comes from the people's love and trust. If they stop trusting him, he'll have no power left." The council members agreed with Marcus's plan. They loaded the evidence onto fast horses and sent messengers to every village and town in the kingdom. The messengers carried copies of the king's letter and told everyone about the stolen grain. Meanwhile, Sarah, David, and the council members started the journey back to the capital city with the grain wagons. They moved slowly, stopping in every village to show people the evidence and let Lord Harrison confess his crimes in each village. More people joined them. Farmers who had been worried about feeding their families this winter. Merchants who had wondered why grain was so expensive. Mothers who had been saving every coin to buy bread for their children. By the time they reached the capital city, thousands of people were walking with them. The crowd was so large that the king's army couldn't attack without hurting innocent citizens. When they arrived at the castle, the king was waiting with his remaining loyal guards. But he looked scared and alone, standing on the castle walls while thousands of angry people filled the streets below. Lord William stood on a platform so everyone could see and hear him. "People of the kingdom," he called out, "your king is betrayed. Your trust." He has stolen food from your children to make himself rich. Captain Marcus, a loyal guard, risked his life to bring us this proof." The crowd became very angry when they saw the grain wagons and heard Lord Harrison's confession. They demanded that the king come down and explain himself. Finally, the castle gates opened, and the king walked out. He looked older and more tired than Marcus had ever seen him. "I only wanted to make the kingdom stronger," the king said, but his voice was weak, and no one believed him. "You wanted to make yourself richer," someone in the crowd shouted, "while our children would have starved." The crowd voted to remove the king from power and send him away from the kingdom forever. They chose Lord William, Lady Catherine, and Master Thomas to rule together and make sure this could never happen again. As the sun set on this long day, Marcus stood with Sarah and David, watching the grain being distributed to families who needed it. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked him. "You're not just a royal guard anymore. You're a hero." Marcus smiled and looked at all the happy families receiving food for their children. "I think I'll stay a guard," he said. "But this time I'll guard the people instead of just one person. And I promise I'll never stop asking questions." The mission that was supposed to end Marcus's life had instead given him a new purpose. He had learned that true loyalty wasn't about following orders blindly. It was about protecting innocent people and standing up for what was right, even when it was dangerous. From that day forward, Marcus became the captain of the People's Guard, making sure that no ruler could ever again betray the trust of those they were supposed to protect. And he never forgot the lesson he had learned. Sometimes the most important mission is the one where you choose to disobey.